Once again, very good morning, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. So, one of the key points in the subject line is data, right? When developing with data. So, data is a huge topic, and each one of us comes with a different background. But the common theme is how we use data in our respective businesses, in our personal lives, in our social lives, things like that. So, we would like to discuss and share some of our observations in terms of how we have been using data as a business, and then what kind of use cases have made it possible now for us to solve problems that were otherwise not possible with the advent of AI and other confluencing technologies. So, I'd like to start with a key topic. Yeah. So, which is the use of data. But let's go with a round of introduction. So I'll have Jiju start introducing himself.
Yeah, my name is Jiju Eldus. I am a software. I started my career as a software developer. Now I run a software services company, CG Software Solutions, and we have our presence in US and India. We have worked with different enterprises, startups, governments also in sometimes to kind of deal with the real world problems and solve data in real time, right? Issues that comes with data and all of that. That is my high level background.
Hi, my name is Karan Sharma, and I am working for AH Infotech. So AH Infotech is basically into consulting and outsourcing. We provide software services to in many domains. It could be healthcare, media, entertainment, and machine learning, all those stuff. And we have a presence in US, India, Ukraine, Canada, and Munich in Germany. So yeah.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you, Jiju. Again, I'm Kamesh Challuri. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Accurate Consulting Group. We focus primarily on digital experience management and e-commerce solutions for mid-market companies. And our target industries are generally retail, media, entertainment, telecom, a little bit of healthcare and fintech as well. So let me start with the first question. When it comes to data, right, in the broader context of how data is being used, there is, to begin with, good data and bad data, for lack of a better word. So could each one of you explain from your perspective how you qualify data as good and how you qualify data as sometimes bad and sometimes outright, garbage? Because we keep talking about garbage in, garbage out, right? So in that context, what's good data, bad data, and something in between maybe?
Correct. So if you look about the data, I believe it's the backbone of all the industries. It doesn't depend which industry it is. It's entertainment industries or medical industry, hospitality. It doesn't depend. I think data is the backbone. If you want to grow in the industry, or if you want to grow your business, you need to have the proper data. So right now in the market, there are a lot of lead generations softwares are available. A lot of people buy the leads, but those are not 100% correct, right? It it depends on the time also. If you buy a lead today, maybe it is useful now, but after a week or after 10 days, it's not useful, right? So in order to make that, we have to normalize the data properly. Whatever the data we are getting is not always true. So we have to filter out the things. The data is not always the good one. So those things, we have to take care before using it into our industries aspects. What I could say. So the normalization of data is very important. We have to segregate it between good and bad. Yeah.
Karan, just on those lines, how long generally you keep data? I mean, do you keep data? You talked about a lead that becomes stale in about a week, right?
It depends on which industry you are, and it depends what you want to do for that data. Sometimes it's a finance data, sometimes it's a royalty data, sometimes it's just the basic lead generations for the real estate. So it depends, which industry you are working on and what is your outcome out of that. Sometimes we use data for the forecasting, sometimes we use the data for the royalty, sometimes we use data for the sales. So it depends, it completely depends on your requirement and industry. Yeah.
Okay. Are you using AI for any of these things to distinguish between good and bad data?
See, we have lot of tools available in the market, for the forecasting, for AI, for machine learning, and also, it depends. Like for us, we serve a lot of client, media industries, healthcare industries. So sometimes we do made customs products for them, so that whatever the data they are looking for their perspective, we are building those softwares for them. You know, so it's sometimes it's a custom made software because the data is a very sensitive topic. They don't want to expose their data in the market. So whatever the tools are available, that they don't have the trust, they don't trust those tools, they have the trust issues, because they're exposing their data. So sometimes we have to build a customized tools for them. So yeah, it again depends on the requirement, what kind of data they are using, they want to expose in the market, or they don't want to expose in the market. So it depends on that.
Okay. So, Jiju, on those lines, right? What are your experiences?
So this particular aspect of good data, bad data is very dicey, right? Because you have data, right? A lot of times it's based on the use case that you want to use it for. Right now, a particular data that you have, it could be something that you use for a machine learning problem, right? And we look at different attributes that are present in that particular data. So if you're getting just just names of all of the people of a particular state, what you can do with that is very less. But if you get maybe age plus gender, right, then you can infer much more as a business case, or even as a business owner to take a decision, right? So now the we call this more of a structured data. It's like what all are the information that you can extract out of that for a particular use case that you want to kind of run. That actually decides whether the data is good for that particular use case. Now, like if you have more data, sometimes it's good, but sometimes more data gets you to an analysis paralysis also.
Right, right. Because you talked about an interesting point. Two individual data points may not make sense independently, but when you start putting them together,
Yeah.
then
So,
you're seeing some
yeah.
value out of it.
Yeah. So the bad data is highly contextual, and it's also based on what you want to infer out of it, what you want to do with the data, right? So based on that, you'll have to qualify. And at a later point, when you have to kind of use the data to kind of generate inference out of it, that's when what is the business case that you want to solve with the data? That's what decides, whether the data that you have is good or bad, and what all you need to kind of get more to kind of sometimes you might have to do cleanup of the data, right? For example, what you've gotten is a big string, and from which you might have to kind of extract the pin code, the phone number, right? If you look at a wiki page of an organization, it is plain text, right? It is unstructured. From there, what all you can do as cleanup actions to kind of maybe sometimes it's a crawler looking at it to kind of identify particular segments to extract that out of it, so that you can kind of identify, say, in this region, have these many customers whom I can cater to for a particular business, right? Now, it started from raw plain text data, but now you kind of did your cleanup. The data was initially not good, right? But your cleanup process, your pipelines over a period of time created really valuable data for you, which can solve a business case for you.
Right. Now let's turn to the audience, and maybe if anybody can share their insights and observations in terms of how they segregate data as good data, maybe bad data, and what are the guidelines in terms of keeping the bad data at bay and leveraging the good data for business purposes. Would anyone like to share their observations?
Also, if you have any challenges that came across you folks, and how did you solve it? Maybe that will help everybody.
Yes, please. So how do you solve for that? I mean, like, is there a pattern that you've established? Got it. Okay. Any other observations or points? Right. 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 Yeah, I think the problem is one step further, right? Even in B2B, you see two different departments sending out same RFPs to different vendors. Okay, it comes from the same organization, but it goes to different vendors in different shapes and forms. So I think master data management is at the heart of that. So I'll have
One point I will add is, in any of these, architectural decisions, when you have at an organization level, we follow this pattern called a single source of truth, right? So when you have master data management, always have a single source of truth, so that one is sometimes what happens is, it's very trivial, but this happens a lot. The point of assuming that if you have two systems in which the master data was managed, and one department came to know that one point of contact changed, that person moved the organization, they updated in that particular system, but now it's not propagating it to the that system used by other department, right? They will continue to send emails to an inbox which does not exist. So as a practice, an organization can always for this kind of purpose ensure that there is a single source of truth, and make sure that that is what is getting integrated with the other systems.
I'll add a point on that. See, instead of creating two different data, a lot of organizations are looking into, if you have a very big data kind of concept, there's a data lake. You put all your data from the different sources at a one place, and whenever it is required, you can normalize the data and extract whatever the information is required. So that is another, way of, another method of dealing with your problem.
So Karan, just a question. Does that data lake have to be real or is it virtual? Can you aggregate all the data from different sources into a virtual data lake so that you don't have to spend time and money on hardware?
See, it's not about the hardware thing. It depends how much data you have. You can outsource different databases from the market, which are very low cost, I would say. You don't have to build your own database on premises. There are a lot of other, software kind of services are there, where you can just rent out the database and you can create and you can customize out of it. So again, it depends how much data you have. If you are having a big data, your cost will, depends on that. Yeah.
So Nick, does that answer some of the points? I mean, like the question that you asked? Because having a single source of truth, having a data lake, these are some measures that can be put in place, right? In the spirit of maintaining that, master data management. Okay. So now let's just discuss the economics of, having good and bad data. So I'm just trying to understand. As we gather a lot of data, I mean, it's believed that 80% of the data that we look at was created in the last 2 years. I mean, that's the kind of data that we are generating today. It's being created by organizations, by individual users, user-generated content. It's being created by machines, right? As we plug in these machines everywhere, there's a lot of data that's coming from the network devices. All these, we talk about wearables and things like that. So that's on the rise.
Yeah.
So can you guys talk a little bit about the costs attached with it? Storing good data and purging bad data, delineating that, we talked about it, but the economics of the model along with the business value. So let's start with you, Karan.
I completely agree, Kamesh, with you. The purging of data is very important. So, we have to make a timeline that do we need data of such you know, do we need the data for a long time?
Right.
You know, is it, so there are two, I would say. We can segregate the data between, you know, real-time data and the master data, or the data which is like, you know, we can keep somewhere, we can store somewhere for the, you know, whenever it is required. It's not handy, but it is there somewhere,
Right.
you know. So, or the third is like purging of data. You know, you don't need that data at all. You just use the data and it's not useful. So we have to come with a solution for segregating the, you know, requirement. Okay, this is the data I am using on a real time basis, so I will keep it on my system. This there is a second part. I might need once in a year or 6 month, or once in a 6 month, once in a month. So I'll keep the data in a different part. And third is like, you know, okay, this is a one-time uses. I use the data and I'll purge it. So the cost also comes like that. Okay, if you take the services of AWS or the other providers, they have lot of tools like S3. They have S3 buckets. You can go and you can store the data there. The cost is very nominal, and you have the services with them, you know, which helps you to get the real-time data. So yeah, again, it depends, you know, how much data you have and what kind of data you want to store in the real time and what kind of data you have to store in the traditional way. So that way you can segregate and you can decide on the basis of cost.
Got it. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
So, now every company is data obsessed, right? So they want to have data. But what is important is how much, actionable that data is. And what do you want to act on it, right? If you don't have a clear timeline defined for it, a lot of time you might be kind of just wasting storage and resources, right? Because large organizations, this might be something that we'll talk about, uh, store data to the granularity that uh, how much time a particular user is spending on a page, whether this when did the scroll happen from the time of load of the page, potentially where all did the mouse move to understand the heat map. All of this information is getting stored somewhere. Now, any organization, there are enough and more tools available that anybody can implement this, store it in your data lake. And the so as a business owner, what you should look at is, classify the data into different segments, right? One is your user data, which is like, identifiable user data with respect to user profile, your end user. Then there are transaction data that comes in, which is got to your business, right? They purchased something, they did a subscription, or they engaged on your platform that you're building by making a post, if you're doing a LinkedIn kind of stuff. So these are all user engagement, right? Then you have another set of data which is to track user behavior. This is important if you want to kind of identify a random machine learning algorithm, provide recommendations, and all of that. So now you have these classifications. So you do not touch your core user data. That is, that is to stay forever unless they have a requirement to prune the data by GDPR or other compliance reasons. Financial data, transactional data, that is also is something that you would not touch. You might offload that to a secondary storage due to historical reasons, but that data is also there to stay, right? Now comes the data which is that you're tracking from user behavior, right? When did the user come in? What is the pattern? And their location, their IP, their click-throughs, their mouse movements, all of that. When you look at the amount of space that is used, of course, this last set is going to be the huge one, right? It is, as organizations, it's important that you specify a timeline, like when am I going to act on it? And if you don't act on it, be very brutal about it. You have to prune the data,
Right.
right? Otherwise, it's going to cost a lot of wastage.
Absolutely.
So that is my take.
All right. Thanks for that. Now, before we move on to the other use cases, just one thought, because this is a session on AI marketing and the role of data. So, with the advent of LLMs, Gen AI, right, specifically, they're creating a lot of data. How do you see the role of LLMs in terms of creating quality content, the right kind of data? And do you because you go back and you have this entire thread of data that you've created. It's your private instance, but it is still being stored somewhere. So how do you see the role, the power of LLMs in terms of data creation, in terms of understanding what the right data is, keeping track of what you've done in the past as it aligns to businesses.
So Kamesh, if you talk about the large language models, sometimes the data, if you feed the data to a system and you keep feeding them, I'll take an example of ChatGPT. Okay, you open the ChatGPT, you create an account. The day one you ask the questions, it will give you a different response.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep using that for a month or something, it will absorb your data. It will read. It will do some internal analysis, and it will. If you feel it is more friendly to you,
Right.
whatever the answers you are getting,
Right.
it's more so it's like a learning itself.
Yeah, it's building the context.
Correct.
Yeah.
So whatever the data you are feeding, it depends it with the span of time,
Mm-hmm.
it's generating the things by its own.
Right.
Okay, it's getting more and more intelligent. If you talk about the cars, the self-driven cars, right? Uh, what are those? We are just feeding them data. We are feeding them instructions. Okay, it is riding based on the instructions. It's self-driven. If you take that car and if you so it's limited to the few cities, right? In Austin and
Right.
in LA, some part of LA. But if you take that car and just launch to some different city, you just put those cars on in New York City. I don't think so. It's gonna work. It's not
That's right,
ready,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it depends on the time. It keeps enhancing their ability to do the performance or to make the decisions. So then it comes to your LLM model and AI or ML thing. So with the time, it's developing. So you need to spend some time. You need to use those systems. Then only it will be more efficient. That's what I believe.
Right. Okay. Got it. Yeah.
So one thing about LLMs are, it's about how much you have, used data to train them, right?
Right.
So it just generates content out of what it is trained on, right? So now, if that particular, if you are not given the data, or if you have trained with the wrong data, right? Then it is it will by default it will generate wrong answers, right? So and another part that we see right now is most of the LLMs, kind of get data from the internet, right?
Right.
So they crawl, and that is one of the input that goes into their system. Studies show that Stack Overflow has lost a significant amount of traffic after ChatGPT was launched, right?
Right. Right.
So so it's like because of course there is high chance that Stack Overflow was a source for this particular training, and you have answers, Quora, all of these guys, right? Now, an interesting that we see is a lot of people are using LLMs to generate content again, right? Blogs, typical content writing. This again goes back to the space, right? Now, what you see is a cycle in which the collective intelligence is not increasing, right?
Right.
Because by any chance, if there is absolute truth, LLMs could create 90 percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on that 90 percentage, if you are not doing proper vetting, and if that content goes back, you are the the, the truth, the percentage of truth, because next time whatever goes out, the LLMs gets trained on that, and it will have a bias towards that, and that will again make the system create less smarter results over a period of time.
Got it. Yeah. Makes sense. So let's move on to the next set of topics. Okay. Now, when we talk about harnessing data and look at some industry use cases that were otherwise not possible, but today you can solve some problems leveraging tech by harnessing the data. For example, in our business, we focus on a lot in terms of providing personalized solutions to our clients, recommendations, offers, content. So we focus a lot on personalization, and we blend it with the context of the customer. So for example, let's say you are in Vegas, and the way you're shopping for something, your mindset is different because you're here, rather than when you're at work in the middle of the week, right? So at one point of time, these were not possible, but today, when you track customers where they are, what's the context in which they are. So it is helping us provide that element of personalization to our clients, and they are able to, get that differentiation when they take it to their markets. So I wanted to understand your thoughts on some of these use cases in terms of personalization, in terms of contextual engagement with customers, in terms of fulfillment. So why don't we start with you, Jiju, and let's talk a little bit about personalization and also the optimization of resources, be it tech resources or any other form of optimization. So what are your thoughts in terms of harnessing data to better optimize the resources that are available?
So, this is a practice that is used by large organization already. From a resource standpoint, um, like anything that consumes that is kind of used to solve the problem is a resource, right? Now, typical patterns that we see quite often is, a use case that a lot of us would be able to connect. Maybe when you are doing an e-commerce site and the purchase is done, and at the end you have to kind of deliver the product, right? Now, planning the optimal. This is something that we did for a customer in Singapore. What we built was a system in which there are orders that are coming, and this orders, finally we have to kind of deliver it. Now, to deliver to reach the product to the end consumer, what is the optimal route with respect to physical route that you have to take to get your efficiency to the maximum, right? So this was a very interesting problem. So how we solved was that, of course, we have the end points, and we know which all are the routes that can take to kind of uh, uh, you know uh, uh, plan the sequencing, saying like, you point A to B to C to D, and then you know that how many delivery trucks you have to plan the kind of route for each of the trucks, because to provide a simultaneous delivery, right? So this was an optimization problem that came to us, which was a really interesting one. Now, for solving this, the one part is, it is a typical traveling salesman problem kind of stuff. But what made it more interesting was, now you have a lot of geographical data and live traffic data that comes in,
Okay.
right? So that was the challenge there, because you can't go for a static route, right? Based on the time of day that you're delivering, you have to kind of optimize it. This was one.
Okay. So, Karan, what are your thoughts in terms of optimization, in terms of scalability?
See, the optimization thing is, you cannot use the raw data anyhow. You know, whatever the field it is, whatever is your requirement, and whatever industries you are working on. Once you get the data, you have to do the optimization. You have to do normalization, and you have to do a lot of filters out of it. The data is everywhere. Okay, sometimes you have to go with the real-time data as well. I'll give you an example. Uh, Sometimes we follow the Google Maps, right? We know, okay, we are going from distance A to distance B, and it's gonna take me 1 hour or 2 hour or XYZ amount of time. Suddenly the crash happens, right? And it it shows hike on the time. The time got increased or something like that. But at the end, Google shows you a detour, right? Okay, try this
Right.
route, and so it works on the real time data, right? It has optimized the situations, it has optimized everything. Okay, this is not the right route for you.
Right.
If you choose that route, it might increase your journey time or something like that. But instead, he is giving us suggestions that, okay, you can take a detour and you can use that route. Okay,
Right.
so in that way the optimizations comes. Sometimes you have to optimize on the real time basis, whatever the real time situation is happening. So those are one thing. And in real life also, okay, I'll give you another example. Let's take any kind of industry, maybe the music industries, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have launched two songs, okay, and you are advertising both the songs simultaneously, but the one song is like popping up really well. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it is having a lot of views, it is generating a lot of views, lot of streams, lot of downloads. So what does the company do? Company will promote the point A instead of point B. Sorry, the song A instead of song B. So that, then again, the real time trends comes up, and they optimize the situation, and they optimize their data, and instead of promoting song B, they start promoting song A.
Okay.
So sometimes you have to think on the situation. Sometimes you have to take the decision So that way, you have to deal with the data and optimize the situation and perform the task.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is probably a good segue to the next part, which is around fulfillment, because you talked a little bit about the power in terms of the ability to optimize, with some specific examples. So let's take it in the case of a business situation where fulfillment and forecasting becomes important. Can you please share your thoughts on that?
See, again, if multiple industries has their own demands and their own supplies and all their own requirements, right? If we talk about let's talk about the stock market, right? So the complete stock market is based on the forecasting.
Right.
Companies are making decision based on the data what they have. They have some traditional data. They have the patterns. So they, with the help of those pattern, with the help of the data, whatever it's going on, they do forecast, they do investments, and they spend a lot of money out of it, right? So the forecasting comes into the picture. There are a lot of tools people are making, for the forecasting, or there are a lot of data scientist companies are hiring. There are a lot of analysis going on for the forecasting. Uh, because it's the main thing, whatever the decision company is making, whatever the investment they are doing, it's based on that. So that is one of the most important thing, I believe, in any industry. If you talk about the sales also, if we talk about the demand and supply, suppose in e-commerce, right? You open an e-commerce company, you launched a product on your website, but you cannot simply you cannot simply buy from the consumer. Sorry, you cannot simply buy from your vendors or somewhere. You have to optimize the market. You have to analyze. Is this the correct market? If I'm launching this product, how much product I need?
Right.
I need to maintain my warehouse. I need to
Right.
maintain my inventory. So that forecasting you have to that you need to think and you need to analyze. You cannot just stock up the things,
Right.
right? If you have the vendor, if you have some kind of product, you cannot stock up. You cannot just stock up. You need to analyze and you need to go through the study and you need to have the proper numbers out of it.
Right.
So that's how the forecasting is important.
Let me ask a follow-up question to that before we move on to you. Forecasting has been around, right? For as long as businesses have existed, they always needed to forecast their raw material, their inventory, getting it from the warehouse. How do you see this evolving with the availability of better data, better analytical tools? So, what's the difference between then and now?
See, if you talk about the traditional method, I'll give an example of the hospitality industry.
Uh-huh.
So there were no tools available. Okay, there were no data scientists available at that point of time. The forecasting thing was not booming up, but still the scalability and the decision the companies are making, they were having some sort of data. Okay, if you talk about the hospitality industry, there were no tools earlier.
Right.
They just go out and see the number of cars. Okay,
Yeah.
if the cars are there, you know the prices depends on how many cars they have, how many rooms they have filled. So based on that, they just increase and decrease the prices.
Right. That's apparently what JW Marriott used to do.
Exactly.
Look at
Yeah.
the parking lot and come back and price the room appropriately.
Correct. So they don't have the any kind of tools that point of time. They don't have any kind of database solutions, data strategy, and the data scientists with them. But still, they were managed to do all those stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Jiju?
So, I mean, pretty much most of the points kind of summed up. If I were to add, um, I mean, this is something that that people can implement, right? When you look at as a business owner, how do I have this problem and solve it? The techniques that mentioned by Karan is something that is implemented across, where you look at data, understand trends,
Right.
and the trends is what you use for your forecasting. So now trends could be event specific, right? You have to kind of understand what are the events that is triggering that trend and kind of understand it. So that is to a great extent thanks to data we are able to kind of solve that right now.
Right. I just want to turn to the audience and see if there are any other interesting use cases that you believe we are able to address with more tech power in our hands, based on analyzing data, based on extrapolating patterns out of the data. So, any thoughts from any one of you? Yeah, go ahead, please. a good question. So, Gigi, you want to do that?
So one aspect is for training an LLM, most of the time there is very less personal data that goes into it, right? User specific data doesn't go into the training of an LLM, right? So, but of course, if you look at, there are personal data available. For example, whatever is available on the Wikipedia, right? That is, of course, if it is, say, Trump's personal data, you can say, but it is public, right? But as an end user, it is not there, right? Now, if you are by yourself putting data out there public, for example, I personally blog about my, life choices, preferences, all of that, it leads to an interesting situation where you have this person was, avidly talking about all of his life, matters, and it was public. The LLMs or the crawlers over a period of time, took it in. Now, as a model, it can do two things. It can flag it as that particular context is of a person. The entity that in reference is a person that could be identified and flagged. Okay, that's one thing. Now, one fine day, this guy had a brainwave and he's like, okay, I don't want to do, I'm feeling, kind of very skeptical. Now, I took my blog away. Now I have a need of, the right to be forgotten, right? But very less chance that something like this is getting out there on an LLM query for a data out. But from a LLM designer standpoint, if something, it's important for us to kind of understand and so what happens in the background is there will be crawl cycles that will be run over and over again. So the next time when the crawl cycle runs and try to get that particular entity which it indexed before, it will identify that that is no more existing, and it has to respect that and take that out of the last ingestion. So that could be the way that it happens. Of course, there is going to be a time delay, right? Now, the person took away his blog on, say, 1st of March. The crawl cycle is to happen by mid of March. For that window, it is going to be available there. So, but the models are also smart enough to understand that, this particular data is personal data, or is it like a, information, right, which is non-personal. So, that is the way that, it could be solved. And to a great extent, that's what's happening as well.
I think the question was also around guidelines, right? Regulatory guidelines, GDPR, CCPA. I mean, do they have any bearing on the user-generated data, LLM-generated data? It's public data, but still it's data, right?
Yeah. So as of now, if the data is voluntarily put out by the user, the conflict happens when they want to take it away, and whoever has kind of persisted that at that point. So
Okay.
that conflict point is what we're talking about. Right?
Okay.
I'll add to a point. So, see, there is always the regulations, but no one follows it. If you install a software, you never read the agreement. You just click next, next, I agree, I agree. So, if you go to any website, there is a cookies thing. You never open and see if they have anything. You just give the permission to all of them. So, ultimately, you are giving permission to access your data on a public platform. So, there is some regulations, but it is projected in such a way in the market that it's very difficult for us. We are thinking that our data is safe, but it's not. You are giving the permission to them.
Right.
So it's projected in such a way.
Okay. Any other use cases that we can think of? Because see, we one of the things that we are solving with the help of data analytics and all the tools that are available is when we are working with a client in the middle of the engagement, at some point in time, we ask a very rhetorical question like, do you know who your most valuable customers are? And most of the time, the clients don't know who they are. They can talk about their most revenue generating clients, but they're not going to be able to say who their most profitable customers are when we talk about valuable customers. But today, tech gives us the ability to get the right kind of data, run the right kind of analytics, and build intelligence into those solutions to be able to get that information. Because we primarily work in the retail sector for our clients. This is very important. We also work in subscription-based industries like media, entertainment, and a little bit in telecom. But primarily, these are the kinds of problems we are able to solve. So the next set of topics that I just want to quickly touch upon are your experiences in various industries. Because we talked about retail, you briefly touched upon hospitality in that context. What about companies like entertainment and gaming, healthcare? So maybe Jiju will start with you. Are there any industries that that you're working where you can see a huge difference as a result of the availability of data and providing solutions that were otherwise not possible?
Actually, one very interesting aspect that because we talk about right now, the AI coming in and taking away jobs and all of that, right? So I feel like the machine learning and the availability of data has made us do a lot more, right? So one kind of use case that comes to my mind is where I feel still we are not leveraging data to the extent that we should be is climate, right? So
Okay.
so what happens is now we all know that the recent fires in LA, right? So if you look at it, the data was out there. Maybe somebody can look at a maps data or whatever to identify that the landscape has changed, right?
Right.
Now it is possible with the current set of stuffs to kind of run a hypothesis. What can go wrong, right? This is very required. I don't think that there is sufficient amount of effort put into this because what happens is like if we could if there was a model and if somebody thought about it and kind of ran these models and if there was a warning that was given saying like, hey, there is a chance of such a catastrophe to happen,
Right.
right? Then we all could have been prepared about it, and it can go to any extent. Maybe it can even suggest like, these are the fire lines to draw, right? To kind of optimize on eviction, right? So that is one because it comes from one of my experience. We were helping the government in there was a flood situation in Kerala in 2017.
Right.
So at that time, we helped with evacuation and corresponding relief and rescue and all of that situation. So there also, what happened was like all of a sudden they kind of released the dams and water flew overall. Overall, in Kerala, it's like a very small landscape. In 6 hours, time is what you have for the entire water to come in,
Okay.
and close to 300 lives were lost. So all of this could have been avoided if they had used data to understand, in a flood situation, which are going to be the waterways, and which are going to be safe zones. Have this planned in advance, and kind of solve it. In the same scenario, we also have a dam in Kerala, which is a big conversation right now. It's a 99-year-old dam, which is a gravity dam, and people are very skeptical about it. It's not politics that I'm saying. All I'm saying is there is a potential to use the data to understand if at all something happens, right? What can go wrong? Which all are the safe zones for the people, right? So the same thing in LA. If there is a fire happens, what all are the safe zones that are possible for somebody to be, keeping them or their loved ones safe? These parts are some of the aspects which I feel, which has an increasing need because, climate is kind of, I know a lot of people might not agree to it, but we are seeing that so evident. So we have to use data in this particular aspect to kind of understand what is coming in. We already use that on weather predictions and all of that, right? Now with a lot of compute that is available and the data available, we this is one not an industry but uh, a segment in which we have to kind of use more of data to kind of generate inferences and use AI as the tool to kind of nobody can kind of fight nature, right? But
Right.
in case of an event, to kind of forecast it, plan for that adversarial situation in advance, and kind of put the necessary checks and balances in place. I feel that is one area where we should be kind of putting a lot more effort in.
Okay. Got it. Karan, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Jijo. The predictive analysis is much more important, before doing any kind of I mean, before doing any kind of forecasting or launching any kind of product, there should be proper predictive analysis, proper in terms of, suppose I give you an example. Okay, if you go to the music industry, if you launch a video or if you launch a song, the, in a different platforms, so you should have a proper data of the age groups, the proper genre. You cannot simply just launch a video in any platform and at any segment, right? So those kind of predictive analysis and those kind of small research is much required, you know, to launch anything. Yeah. So that is another important aspect of predictive analysis.
Sure. I think we have 1 minute left. Any questions or comments from the audience? All right. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. It's been a
Thanks
pleasure.
everyone for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you.